Hello and welcome to this episode of our Wellbeing podcast. Today we'll be discussing maternal mental health, and I am honored to have an absolutely amazing guest with me today. Her name is Rachael Jones, and she is an occupational health specialist who has such passion and is keenly involved in maternal mental health. So, without further ado, hiya, Rachael.
Hi, Mom, how are you?
I am wonderful and really, really grateful to have you here. This is a really important subject, and I'd like you to tell everybody a little bit about yourself before we get into the conversation.
Absolutely. Hello everyone. I am Rachel. I'm an occupational therapist and I work in the mental health sector. I've been working in OT now for almost 5 years. And as a mental health occupational therapist, we support people with many different conditions, depression, anxiety, OCD, all along the spectrum of mental health.
Mm.
And also we encounter people that are either pregnant and struggling with their mental health or new mums struggling with mental health. So actually we cover everything. So I
Good.
have that experience. But as well as that, I also have lived experience as well, struggling with my own mental health after I had my daughter. And also after I had my son as well, but being more prepared and seeing the benefits of that, having a better awareness of my mental health. But also the lack of support that mums get during this time, I think was a big surprise to me. You know, just support to recognize, what it is to be a mum, you
Hmm.
know, the demands that, are put on us, when we become new mums, so I think there's a lot more that needs to be done in this sector,
I agree.
just to improve the care that, mums to be and mums get, so they have better outcomes.
I believe that that would be a really good goal is the better outcomes for mothers' mental health because we hear a lot about the physical aspect of being a parent or even just if we're starting at the beginning with pregnancy, but we don't hear a lot about how that affects your mental health, not only the environmental side of things, but also the actual biological side of things, of the way in which your hormones can affect everything. As the same way as in mental health is seen as a chemical imbalance in certain areas,
Yeah,
your hormones can do that to you for your mental health to take a dip because it is a actual chemistry within you that has changed.
exactly. And I think it's so important as well to have that conversation with mums prior to becoming mums. Look, this is something that's temporary. A lot of people fall into that space because they're so unwell. When they fall into that space, they just start to think they're a failure. They
Yeah,
start to feel that mum guilt and actually what's happening here, this is not how it should be, you know. But if we prepare mums to let them know that actually that imbalance, these changes in your body can actually instigate this change in you,
yeah,
but it can be temporary, it can be something that can be fixed, but with early intervention. And I think that's so important. That's a discussion that needs to be had more with new
yeah,
mums.
I agree.
Um, and the support needs to be given, much earlier.
I fully agree. As
Yeah.
we were discussing before we started recording, we both firmly believe in prevention being better than
Mhm.
cure. So I hope
Absolutely.
that we'll be able to give some good gems in this conversation to allow
Mhm.
people to be able to see what that looks like or what the symptoms may be or the early signs are, and to be able to signpost them to the types of help and support that they can receive within their community
Mhm. Yeah.
and, within the wider nation, because there is a lot more now than probably when I had my first children at what,
Mhm.
22 years ago. Because
Yeah.
I do remember through my own lived experience that I definitely had postnatal depression, but it
Mm.
wasn't picked up as that. And because I was still able to focus on my children as my number one priority, they didn't think I needed any help. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
no, 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 you've got them. You're fine. Whereas internally, I felt like I was screaming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is what is going on for mums even now.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking, what needs to change? There's so much that needs to change because why are we not giving mums the space? to actually say I'm not okay, especially when you're thinking about mental health. There's a huge stigma around actually if you have a mental health condition, you're not a good mum.
Oh,
And a lot of mums
so far
feel
from it.
that. They really do
So,
feel that, and I remember myself feeling that, when I was really struggling with my daughter, like, why is it so difficult? Why am I struggling so much? Like, it must be me, and I think that that's the danger. That's a dangerous spot when people get into that place where they start to have that feeling that they're not good enough,
yeah,
especially with the mental health combined. That's not a good place to be. Very dangerous space to be in.
I agree with you. I think
Mm.
they've fantasized motherhood so much in movies that we assume it is this big, smiley, flowery rainbow unicorns just, decorating rooms and bringing home this
Yeah.
new human, and it's just love and, kisses. It is that. That is a wonderful part of it.
Oh, yeah.
But there's the other side of it, like the exhaustion and the
Mm.
mum guilt and the complete shift that your life is no longer just about you. You shift
Exactly.
from being number one priority to yourself to being somewhere at the bottom when you
Yeah.
become a mum, and you
Mhm.
never feel like you're doing it correctly.
It's true.
All
It's
good
true.
mums, I've been told, never believe they've done enough. That is
Yeah.
actually a sign of being a good mum, is that you never believe you've done it correctly or to the best of your ability. But the fact that you want to is a beautiful sign. And I
Cool.
do need mothers to fully understand that although there is the term, it's okay to not be okay, it's actually not okay to be not okay,
Right.
which is why you need the support to be okay.
Yeah.
Because yes, you can acknowledge that you're not okay, but you don't have to stay there. There
Exactly.
are ways out of it, and it doesn't, as you said, it is temporary. It doesn't
Yeah.
last forever. And if
Yeah.
you get the right support, you should be able to come through this and be able to enjoy one of the biggest blessings and joys we as women get to experience, which is being a
Exactly.
mom.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful experience. And once you get to that point of awareness, you can enjoy it more.
But I'm going to go ahead with the 101 questions I have for you. So we're going to start and see how far
Yeah.
we go, but we're going to do as much as we
Hmm.
can. We can help as many as we can. So my
Yeah.
first question, my darling, is can you define maternal mental health and explain why it's so important? We kind of have already, but if you could just give
Yeah.
us a nice tidbit.
Okay, so maternal mental health, or you can call it the perinatal mental health as well, that's what we call it as well. It's usually the time between, obviously, even pregnancy. It can be from pregnancy all the way till actually someone's child is between 1 to 2 years old. Some people think that it actually just stops at that moment of just after you give birth, the first 6 weeks, but it doesn't.
Mm,
It continues even until the child's two, and sometimes beyond that. Because it also, we think about the changes as well and the challenges that come with becoming a parent. All those things come into it. So it's the birth. What have you gone through during the birth? Then the adaptation of the role, becoming a mother. What does that bring? What kind of feelings does that bring about? What kind of emotions? What struggles
mm,
and challenges? Then, of course, your emotional imbalance as well, chemical imbalance in your body, hormonal changes. There's a lot that happens during this period, and that can go on for up to 2 years. So
yeah,
when people say that, the perinatal or maternal mental health, we're talking about that whole period from, even let's say conception, because, hormonal changes are happening in your body, all throughout pregnancy, then up until two. And that's fine for us to think about maternal mental health being that long and that along that spectrum. That makes more sense.
that makes sense to me. It can go on past that point, especially if it's not handled and it's not been supported and dealt with properly. It could be a whole problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So that's from a OT perspective as well.
Mm,
Um, we're looking at the emotional well-being of the person, identity shifts, hormonal regulation, bonding and attachment with the baby, and also the physical recovery if someone's had like a C-section, for example. What are the physical needs of that person?
yeah.
So we're looking at everything. We're looking at the whole person. That's the good thing about OT approach, occupational therapy approach.
It's the whole person, not just the gynecological side of things. It's
Right.
from head to toe. That's good. A whole holistic care. That's what's needed.
Exactly.
That's perfect.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, my darling. Second question.
Mhm.
How does a mother's mental health impact her baby and her family if she already has one?
Yeah, so I would say, um, I think the best way to start this, actually, I've put down some statistics. I think this is very, very important, that 1 in 10 to 1 in 3 expectant mums and new mums experience mental health. Yeah. And a third of children aged 0 to 15 that live in England, their parents are showing either moderate to severe mental health issues.
Mm,
And actually, women of childbearing age are more at risk of experiencing common mental health conditions, anxiety, depression, and those kind of disorders. So that kind of gives you the figures
oh
of,
wow.
what's happening right now in the UK with families. It's not something that's rare, it's something that's becoming very common. Yeah.
Yeah.
But thinking about how it affects the family, of course, it's very difficult for someone to see their loved one going through that. It
Yes.
can also put pressure on your partner because he also is going to be struggling. And I remember, I'm going to use my own lived experience of this as well. When I was going through the difficulty with my daughter, my husband, like, he didn't know what to do with himself. He literally was, I was always in control of everything, and I'm a
Yeah.
very strong personality. So when he saw me like so vulnerable like that, he was like, wow, I'm really not sure what to do here. He just kept telling me, you're tired, go to sleep. And that just
Mm,
shows a lack of awareness from his side as well. But it's not his fault. It's because
of
we
course.
were not prepared for this. We did not think that this could happen. We thought, oh, rosy and flowers and everything. But the reality is that's not how it is.
Yeah.
So, when you're looking at the partner, there's also a psychological effect on them as well, because they're
Yeah.
watching you go through this experience, and also they're having to also pick up those pieces, and they're
Yeah.
worried, they're concerned, and they don't understand what is going on. So it's very hard for your loved ones to see you in that situation or that way. But in a long term, thinking about mother and baby,
Mm,
mother that's struggling with mental health, what does that how does that affect them? It affects their ability to build a bond with their child. Because
yeah.
if you can't look after yourself and your own well-being, how can you look after others? So you're
True.
just basically just doing that every day. We call it like activities of daily living. You, like what you said, you were managing in your day-to-day tasks, but inside you felt like you were,
Yeah.
you were scream.
Falling apart.
So that's for someone that has, a mental health condition, like a mum. She's just doing it. She's getting along, getting by, but she's not living. And that
Yeah.
is the difference. She's not living at all. So that's going to have an impact on the child, because the child is going to also lose opportunities of socializing, because more than likely you're not going to want to socialize. That's going to be very difficult for you.
Very true. Yeah.
Then the mum guilt comes in because you can't actually meet the needs of your child.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start feeling a low sense of self-esteem, low sense of self-worth. And in the long term, poor physical health as well has been attributed to mums that have mental health for the child. The outcomes are quite bad.
That's very
Um,
true. Yeah.
yeah, and lower school performance as well. That's a long-term thing as well, because I
Yeah.
guess children that have parents that have unresolved mental health issues, we know that by research, that they are more inclined to experience anxiety and all these depressions and all these things at a younger age. So,
Mm-hmm.
it has a huge
Massive.
effect, you know.
The mental health of a mother, and
Mm,
it's the same for a father too, but we're talking
mm,
about maternal mental health today.
mhm,
It really plays a massive part in who her children become.
mhm,
They say, a happy mom or happy wife, happy life.
mm,
It's very true. I'm not saying that everything revolves around the mother, but a lot does.
mm,
And her children will feel that through her.
mm,
And it's not her fault at all, but it does have a knock-on effect. Using
mm,
my own lived experience, I've seen how my mental health going unchecked throughout most of their childhood has had an effect. Now it it will be negative in some ways.
mm,
I'm blessed enough that I was able to catch it, so I'm able to explain certain things to
mm,
my children. for them to have
Mm,
empathy and to understand the struggles that can come with mental health.
lovely.
But it doesn't always go like that. And sometimes the casualty of unchecked mental health is the child.
Mhm.
And both the mother and the child deserve so much more than that.
Mhm.
So I would say to mothers, even if you've gone past that 2 year period and something just isn't feeling right, seek support wherever you can.
Mm,
Go to your
absolutely.
GP. There's a lot of private practices. There's a lot
Hmm.
of information online to help
Hmm.
mothers going through things, to help everybody.
Yeah.
But I would say
Yeah.
if it's something that you can feel that something just isn't quite right,
Mm,
try and handle it as soon as possible because
absolutely.
it will affect your life. Whatever affects your life will affect that of your child's.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also recognizing that mothers don't need to be afraid. You don't need to be afraid and be worried that someone's going to think you're a bad mum because you're reaching out and asking for help. Actually, asking for help is actually looking after yourself and looking after your child. Because if you are well mentally, your children are going to be well mentally. That is a fact.
Yeah,
So, we have to start overcoming the stigma. And I think that that is sometimes very rich in certain communities, like our community.
yes, very much so.
There's a high stigma, um, you know, rate of stigma against mental health, or we think that it can be cured by certain things in certain
Mhm.
ways, especially the older generation. They will say that, you
Yeah,
know, like my auntie, for example, I'm gonna use my example of my auntie. When I set up my business here, my therapy business supporting new mums, and I sent her the web page, she told me, "Oh, in my day, we didn't have mental health. We didn't
oh,
have
you
mental
did,
health at all.
you did.
We ate our foods. We ate our foods. Yam. Yam. We ate yam. It's very good."
That one, I'd like,
So I thought I was really interesting actually, and actually brought it highlighted some issues that we actually have, is
mm,
that lack of awareness, lack
yes,
of education. Yes, yam is brilliant for balancing out hormone, and yam is great. You can eat that throughout. It's very nutritional. It's got so much value to it.
hmm,
However, it does not prevent mental health. And I had to, educate her that actually I was eating. I love yam.
yeah. I'll eat it
I
all
love.
day. If it would work, I'd know.
Yeah. So I love yam. I've been eating yam throughout. So, I told her it doesn't prevent it. I said, but it is, a very good source of, minerals, and it's good for your to balance out your hormones, but it doesn't prevent it. So I
Yeah,
think, um, and more education is needed, for people around us as well to support us better through these
I agree.
experiences. Right? Yeah.
I agree. I do believe that everybody in your village, whether that be one
Mm,
person, 10
mhm,
people, should be educated on what it is you're going through. Once it
mhm,
has been
mhm.
noted that something needs to be supported, everybody should know. Everybody should have
Yeah.
some ideas of what the signs are, what the
Mhm,
symptoms are, and what their role is, as well as the difficulties they're going to face being the support network for someone who's not only become a new mom, but is dealing with mental health struggles. So
mhm,
I'm a
mhm.
firm believer in everybody should be educated
Yeah.
because
Mhm,
we are now in a day and age where information and education is at the tip of our fingers. So there's
mhm.
no excuse for us not to educate ourselves in situations that include people's lives. This is really important. It's
Yeah.
not just something that's all of a sudden come out and mothers are just now dealing with it. As
Mhm.
much as I appreciate what your auntie meant by what she was saying, they had it. They just didn't deal with it. They had
Absolutely.
that stance of, get up, get on with
And
it,
keep going.
keep
And that's
moving, keep going, put a face
absolutely,
on it.
absolutely. I think that's also part of how I, had to educate her as well, is actually when I look back and thinking about even my family life, personal experiences of mental health, it makes a lot of sense. why people did not go and get help, why they didn't go to their siblings and have a chat about mental health, why, you know, they went on for years and years keeping that as a secret, because it was shame. There's so much
Yeah.
shame attached to mental health. And that's, you know, from that comment, I saw that that's still existing, you know.
Yeah.
People are still telling you go and eat yam. People are still telling you, know, that they lack awareness so much. So, you know, it really highlighted a huge issue, but you know, a need for education around, you know, mental health, especially in our community as well. It's really huge because there is a lack of openness still to this day. Um, and that kind of showed that engagement my auntie showed, and it really made me think more about, you know, the fact that what I'm doing is really important.
Yeah, it
Spreading
definitely
awareness.
highlighted that there is a need, and what you're doing is definitely necessary. What would you say are the differences between baby blues and actual postnatal depression?
Okay, so I would say postpartum depression is more something that will continue, will last for a longer period of time.
Mhm,
Maybe you might lose interest in doing things that you love. You
mhm,
might lose the ability to function in your day-to-day life. But that would be not short term, but more long term.
mhm.
Yeah. Baby blues would be, for example, maybe 1 to 2 weeks, you might have a bit of difficulty, you might feel a bit low in mood, you might have outbursts and all these things, but that is, of course, a natural part of your body's changes and all those things. And this is why it's so important for you to have support around those, I would say even 6 weeks or longer,
Mhm.
because if someone sees you in that state and that is continuing past those 2 weeks, then you need to start having a conversation. Actually, maybe you need to go and speak to your GP about how you're feeling, because that's really, you know, it's carrying on, it's continuing past the 6 week mark. Having a chat with your GP is nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
crucial. You know, they can signpost you to support you need. It might be community support, it might be a mum and baby group, you know, where they might talk about your mental health. You know, I mean, unfortunately those things are not very common, and that's the space that I would like to create for mums.
Mhm.
But you know, in some places they do have these facilities, you know, but it could be also just making a self-referral. You know, we can make
Yeah,
self-referrals to mental health support through
yeah.
IAPS, for example, IAPT. Go
Okay.
in and you make that self-referral online. Um, these are things that you can do, the steps that you can take, you know, to support yourself during these difficult times. But I think don't be afraid. That's one thing that we always think in our mind, oh goodness, now I'm gonna have to go and speak about my mental health, and this is really scary to me because it means that I'm not coping, and they're gonna, you know, think that I'm a terrible mum, all these negative thoughts come in.
Mhm.
But we need to remember we're actually being a good mom, because we're
I
actually
agree.
saying something is not right with me. I am struggling a little bit right now, and I actually don't want it to get worse, because ultimately that's what's going to happen.
Mhm.
So let me get the support I need right now.
I agree. That is
So I
very
think
good.
if you see yourself past that 2 weeks and you're still struggling and it's getting harder to manage, go and get that support. Go to your GP straight away. It doesn't always mean medication. It could be a holistic approach that needs to be
Yeah,
taken, emotional support that you need at that moment or time, and that's enough.
yeah. I agree. I don't, it isn't always have to be medication. I think
Mm,
a lot of people worry that if you go to your GP and mention your mental health, the next thing you're going
mm,
to be is drugged up. It doesn't have to be that. A,
mm,
you are an advocate for your own mental health, so
mm.
you get to choose the type of care that you want based on the information that you're given. And there are so much more ways in which to help your mental health than just medication. It could just
Mm,
mean that you may need talking therapy. It could
mhm.
be that things that have happened in your life prior to becoming a mum have now reached the surface because you're
Yeah,
having all of these new feelings as a mum. So it could
yeah,
just be that you need someone to talk to, you need some new tools, you need
yeah,
some self-care time, you need a break. It doesn't
absolutely,
mean that you need to be popping any medication, any pills, because that is not always the first step. I don't think
absolutely.
people realize that that is not the only or the first step. I would try everything else first.
Right.
went to medication.
Absolutely. And I think it's good to have that knowledge as well, that actually you can have that conversation with your GP and say, actually, no, I don't want to do that. Can you
Yeah.
refer me? Please can you refer me to maybe a perinatal mental health community service where I can actually have a different approach. I don't want to do the medical model right now. I want to do a holistic approach. I want to try that first. And that's fine. We can say that to our GPs. We can advocate for our
So
own
right.
mental health and what we want.
I think that's
So
really important is people
yeah,
realizing that in any aspect to do with their health, that they can advocate for themselves, which is, as we were
absolutely.
saying, remain educated. Don't just
Absolutely.
go by what you're told by somebody else.
Yes,
Only you know what's happening inside you. Only
right.
you know what you respond to and how you respond to certain things.
Mhm,
So you have
mhm,
a right to say to your GP, this is the route I'd like to try first. Now,
mhm,
yes, they have more information and more qualifications to be able to guide you. However, their word is not final. Yours is
mhm,
your health,
absolutely.
and it's up to you to decide what you believe will be best to try
Mm,
before you listen to an outside opinion who,
yeah,
yes, is fully qualified, very educated, but
mm.
educated on a whole. They don't know you like you know you.
And that's why I always tell my clients actually, in fact, where I actually work right now, we hold a lot of value in lived experience.
Mm,
Because if someone's lives through it, they know it. It doesn't
yeah,
matter how professional I am as an OT, as a mental health OT, I can't tell that person knows it more than me because they've been through it.
yeah.
So I always think that holds so much value as someone actually going through that themselves and coming to the other side because they know a lot more about what they experienced. They've lived in it, they've been through it, they know the struggles that come with that, you
I
know.
agree.
So there's huge value in lived experience, huge.
There is a lot. There is
Yeah.
the term that's floating about at the moment.
Mm.
Was it expert through experience?
Through experience, yes, it's similar to
I
lived
saw
experience.
that. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's me. I might be, but I definitely have lived experience. So I don't
Right.
think myself as an expert in anything. I'll be learning for the rest of my
Mm.
life. But I do
All
have
of
so
us
much
will.
expertise
Yeah.
through experience that
Right.
I would need to read a book to get. I actually had to walk and live it as it was happening and work through it in real time.
Absolutely.
And every one of us does. And the only
Yeah.
person that is an actual expert on your life is you.
It's you.
That's a
Absolutely. I agree 100%, 100%. Yeah.
wonderful.
Um,
Okay. Are there risk factors that make some mothers more likely to develop common mental health situations and struggles?
yes. So before we get to the risk factor part, I want to also think about some of the misconceptions. I think we did ask about misconception. I think
Yeah,
that's really important to
that'd
cover
be
that.
great. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people think that postpartum depression just looks like one thing, yeah, but it doesn't. And I think a lot of people think to themselves, we spoke about, being bad moms, not being
Mm,
able to cope, you're struggling, you're a bad mom. Oh, you just have baby blues, oh, that will pass. Yeah,
yeah.
you'll be okay after a while. That will pass, And I remember like my family saying to me, "Oh, it's just one of those things. It's
Mm,
anything you just go through that. When you have a baby, it's normal. You know, no, no. If you are struggling and that's continuous struggle, it's not just baby blues.
mhm.
You need to, get seen. Um, and that also it affects only first time mums. No, it doesn't matter if you have one, two, three, four children.
Yeah.
Anyone can be affected
Hmm.
by this. Anyone can experience postnatal depression, anxiety, all those things. So be aware, because you might not have it the first time, but you might have it the second time or the
Yep.
third time. Be aware, and families be aware too. And also, again, we spoke about seeking help, not being strong enough. That's one thing.
Yeah.
Um, And that also another thing, mental health is only a thing that is a problem after birth. No. Also another misconception. People think, oh well, we haven't had the baby yet, so what's wrong? What's going on? So very important to be aware that that can happen during your pregnancy. If you feel those symptoms, you feel that yourself getting low, go and seek support. And a lot of times I've supported people in my current job that have been pregnant a lot of the time. and struggling with their mental health. And
Oh.
we can't forget that external factors, our environment, things that are happening externally can have an impact also. So it could
Yep.
be that person's going through a bad situation with their relationship. That's a trigger.
That's a
Okay.
massive trigger.
Yeah. So then, we have to also consider that mental health doesn't have to start after you have the baby. That can happen during pregnancy also.
That's very true.
Medication not always being the first solution. We spoke about that a bit already, having a holistic approach and advocating for yourself. And we spoke about also the effects on the baby. We spoke about that too. We know that that's, something that can affect baby. Some people think that it just affects mums, but it doesn't. It has a long-term effect on our children too.
Yeah.
And it's easy to spot. That's another thing as well, is that a lot of people think that people that have these, postnatal depression, or that they're going to be not be able to move, they have to be on the couch, and that it is not the reality.
Fully function
It is
with
not the
a certain
reality.
function, and it's not something
Absolutely.
stamped across your forehead.
And even when you
No,
have when you speak about your mental health concerns, we, like, as professionals, we have to understand the value of listening to people. It's not just externally, because people can show a happy face walking down the street, they could be managing, they look clean, everything's fine, but internally they're battling something. And that's the point. If someone's telling you and reaching out and saying, I'm actually battling this, I'm struggling with this and this and this is when, we need to listen as professionals. And I always say that in everything I do, I have that approach. And I always ask the client, what are you struggling in? And the good thing about OT, we don't just look at the fact that that person might have a mental health condition. What can we do for that person medically? No, we look at the whole person. We look at the person, what their barriers are, what they're struggling with. How can we overcome those barriers? Yeah. It could be that they're lacking routine and structure. That has a huge impact on mental health and well-being. We know that. If somebody has a baby, they're usually thrown into something we call occupational dysfunction. Yes. And so that means that basically they don't have the occupational balance anymore. And that dysfunction can be attributed to mental ill health as well. Because you no longer have that balance in your life. You're no longer, looking after yourself as well as baby and all the things that you should be doing. You're now just focusing on baby. And that is very unhealthy. But mums don't realise that, because they think that that's what we're meant to do.
Yeah.
Actually, no.
You do have to have some focus on you, because baby needs you.
Absolutely.
If you don't focus on you, it could get to a point where you're no use to you or baby.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So can we get back to the risk factors?
Yes.
That some mothers, that, because I know there might be certain things that are genetic and certain things that happen. So are there any risk factors or that would allow these symptoms to develop and these conditions to happen?
So I would say if you have a past history of having mental ill health in your family, you can be more likely to experience that. Mental ill health during the perinatal periods. They also say that if we have a past experience of abuse or trauma in our childhood as well, having a baby can actually instigate those feelings again. And so that can basically be re-traumatizing, because you're remembering some of the trauma that's happened in your childhood, and you see that innocent child in front of you, and so you kind of, you have that fear. You just constantly in anxiety mode, thinking, I don't want to spoil this, I don't want to ruin this because this, So, having trauma in your childhood, that could be another one.
Yeah.
Other things could be obviously having difficult situations, like external factors, like what we spoke about,
Yeah,
relationship issues,
environmental. Yeah.
money issues.
Oh,
How am
yeah.
I going to cope? How am I going to buy? I've got another baby coming now. It's going to be very expensive. Things are going up. Bills are coming up. There's lots of things that can impact that mum or make them more at risk of. So we have to look at the whole person. That's the good thing about OT. We look at the whole person and see how we can help the person as a whole. It's not just looking at the fact that, okay, mental health and that's it. No, but actually, let's get to the root of why this is happening. There's always a trigger. This is what we need to realize. There's always a trigger.
Yeah.
So being able to identify that and bring that to the awareness helps us to deal with that and develop coping mechanisms so we're better able to manage it. And that's something that we work a lot especially mental health, OT, we work with clients a lot to overcome, find coping mechanisms so they can overcome, whatever challenges they're having. A lot of people, they come to us using very unhealthy coping mechanisms, drugs, maybe drink, maybe, dangerous behaviors or unhelpful behaviors, harmful behaviors to self. So it's about identifying, what that person needs, what are the triggers, what are the things that are causing you to have these difficulties, and how can we then develop healthy coping mechanisms, exploring those mechanisms with them. Having that holistic approach, exploring things like might be meditation, mindfulness, these things have such value in our lives, but at the moment, how we're living, we wake up, we take our kids to school, we come back, we start work, we go and pick up our kids, we come back, we cook, we never have time to just sit down and breathe.
Yeah, just a woosah moment.
It is a continuous, it's like a wheel just turning, turning, and that is not healthy. That's not how humans are meant to live. So this is why we're having such a high increase in mental health. And if we are not on the move, we're on our screens.
That's really true.
Another battle.
Yeah.
So, there's lots of things, lots of risk factors. But again, sorry, I was actually going off tangent a little bit, but actually risk factors, we could say biological, we could say environmental, we could say social. There's so many different things.
Yeah, there's basically anything that would impact your life as a parent or as a mother, it's going to impact it tenfold. You are not just considering yourself, you are considering a whole being that relies upon you. And yes, if you have a partner, it is shared. If you don't, it's not. Either way, there are still certain pressures that each individual parent goes through. There's pressures mothers go through, there's pressures that fathers go through. Even if you're in a really healthy relationship, it can be a problem sometimes. So those factors, please, people, keep an eye on the environmental things that are going on around you, and make sure that you are making time to be able to check in with yourself, to see where your mental health is. And if you're noticing any struggles, give yourself a moment, do some internal inventory and see where you're at, and if you need any support. And if you do, please get some. Just reach out. It is so important. And as you were saying earlier, reaching out is not a weakness, it is actually a strength. To say, I need help, takes a lot of reduction of ego and pride. You're not supposed to put your hand up and say, I'm struggling here. It's a strength to ask for help, not a weakness. What are the most effective treatment options, do you believe, for postnatal anxiety and or depression?
So I would say, first of all, especially from an OT perspective, we need to look at the person. Every individual is different. So what might work for you might not work for me. So it's about looking at the person and not having a one-size-fits-all approach, because that doesn't really work. First of all, from an OT perspective, we would do an initial assessment. That would help us to identify areas where maybe someone's experiencing difficulties, identify what those difficulties are, and then consider ways of, developing those coping mechanisms we spoke about earlier, exploring holistic approaches, maybe working on anxiety management, so that is probably the approach that I would take if I was working with somebody, because ultimately it's very difficult to say what would help one person and then it might not help another person. So the good thing about OT is we can explore everything. We can have a CBT approach where we work on trying to change those negative thoughts about self, and we do a lot of work around that. We can think about journaling, we can think about positive affirmations, we can think about introducing that into our daily lives and trying to change the way we're thinking about self. That can help a lot. Then we can think about the other side, with developing a space for yourself. So looking at someone's routine and structure, do they have occupational balance? Do they need to include designated time for themselves where they can sit and have a bit of quiet time? How can they rope in a friend, rope in their partner into that routine and structure and make that more healthy for themselves? Because sometimes when we're mums, we don't realize that we are constantly turning like a wheel. We just do it naturally.
Yeah.
Do it naturally.
Autopilot.
Yeah. And I think that's damaging, that's dangerous, because when we are doing that, we're not realizing how we're neglecting our well-being, our health, and our needs. And ultimately, that's affecting our mental health. That's going to affect our well-being.
Fair enough.
So
Yeah.
you have to really start thinking about, mums have to start thinking about themselves as well. Just because you think about yourself, I need to go to the gym for an hour a week, that's okay. You need that time, you know. And actually, the second time when I had my son, I was more able to implement those things in my life. So I knew that I needed that to stay well, you
Good.
know. So these are things that it's just also becoming aware. But treatment options, there's lots of different treatment options. You can go down the psychotherapy route. You can work with the OT about, changing your routine structure, developing coping mechanisms, holistic interventions. OTs do more of that, while the psychotherapist will be looking more about your emotional needs and maybe thinking about the root cause of, your thoughts. You're going a bit deeper into it than an OT would. So there's different support you can get out there, different support. But it's definitely worth speaking to your GP, because they'll also be able to guide you, refer you to, things in the community, like I said before, and maybe even IAPS. They can also do a referral as well to IAPS for you. And maybe even perinatal mental health team if they deem that that's necessary. If they deem that you really do need it. So there's different things, but the whole idea is that we want to have approach which is preventable. That's my idea. That's what I feel that is so needed, because that's what's lacking right now in this sector. At the moment, there's lots of women that actually getting to the point where they get so unwell, they're sectioned under the Mental Health Act, and that shouldn't be happening, because we know that women are vulnerable during this time. So why is that happening? It's happening because there's not enough support for those mums.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. And it's hurtful, it's painful to see women, in that situation. Actually, that was when I was a student. One of the things that really hurt me a lot is actually going into the acute mental health unit and actually seeing women that have just had babies. They're literally just like, the babies are like a week old, 2 weeks old. And you can clearly see that they are struggling with psychosis, and they're being treated for psychosis. But actually, why do they even get to that state in the first place? Where was the support before?
Yeah. It'd be important. As we've said already, prevention. Because then we don't have to get to trying to fix the problem. We don't get to the problem in the first place. Sometimes that's not possible. However, wherever we can catch it early is best. And I think the best way to catch it early is for mothers to be aware of what's going on with them, around them, and to be able to be advocates for themselves, and to know that reaching out is the best option for them to be able to move forward from that space.
Yeah, definitely.
I mentioned postnatal psychosis. Now, I know that is quite rare, but it's extremely serious. So can you explain for everybody what it is and how to seek help if they're experiencing it in their lives?
So I would describe it as a sudden onset of severe mental health symptoms. It can affect the ability to function altogether. And it usually occurs in the first 2 weeks or up to 6 weeks postpartumly. And yeah, I think a lot of people think that, when you're in psychosis, you're just, you're not able to do anything, you're not able to function, you want to hurt yourself, or you want to hurt your baby, and that is just not how it goes. And it could be, I want to say, like, from my lived experience of having that after I had my daughter, for me, my trigger was not sleeping. I hadn't slept for 3 days. So at that point, when she had got that support, I was already in that very, very danger zone where I actually wasn't, I felt like I was not in reality. Like you're
Oh,
playing a computer game and you're inside the computer game. That's how I felt, because actually I couldn't really distinguish between both. But the funny thing is I was still functioning. So anyone looking at me would not even think that, I had
very
an
well.
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the danger. This is the danger of this psychosis place, because you might not be walking and not looking, not knowing yourself, or not knowing, it might not be like that. It might be that you have these for thoughts that are actually, they don't make sense. And the only person that would identify that is someone next to you. So I remember saying to my husband, like, this is not me. That
Mm.
is me. This is not me. That is me. That my daughter is me as baby. It was so crazy. And he couldn't understand what on earth I was talking about. And he just thought, I kept saying to me, you're tired, go and sleep. You're
Yeah.
tired, go and sleep. He kept saying that to me, but in my mind, I was not in my mind, in my right mind at all,
Up
and
and it's still the same.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's really interesting, and this is why we need more awareness about this, because there's people that actually go through that, and just with a little bit of support, they can bring themselves back round,
I agree.
but I had to seek that support in the community. I had to go out there and seek it myself and actually say that I need this support, which people that are really unwell are not going to do. So then what's going to happen? They're going to decline and decline and decline and decline until they get to that really, really place where they are out of body completely
Yeah.
and cannot function, cannot look after their baby. Their baby's now at risk because this person is unable to support themselves, let alone their child. So
Yeah.
when we think about symptoms of that, of psychosis, confusion, disorientation, like I said, feeling like you're not in reality. You're
Yeah.
detached from reality, a real reality.
Body experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is a big one. Hallucination. So seeing and hearing things that aren't there. Again, my experience of saying that that's me, that baby is me, and I'm not me. You know,
Yeah.
crazy, absolutely crazy. But you're not in that real place. So, hallucinations, seeing things, hearing things that are not there, delusions, false beliefs. Again, my experiences, extreme mood swings, feeling manic or
Yeah.
deeply depressed in mood as well. Again, difficulty bonding with your baby, not able to sleep or sleeping too much. That's the
Yes.
same
That's
for
the big
depression
one.
as well,
Yeah.
sleeping too much. Um, and then the very, very extreme cases, thoughts of harming yourself and baby, and that does happen. We are not going to ignore
Yeah.
that, because that does happen,
Yeah.
sadly. And again, this is why it's so important to talk about this and really be able to support people at an earlier stage, because this shouldn't happen. It's
Yeah.
avoidable, and these are things that happen because of the imbalances we're having at that, within those first 2 weeks or 6 weeks. Body's changing, everything's happening, in your body that's causing you to fall into these mental health episodes. So why, if we know that, why are we not helping people?
Yep.
This is my point. So
This
very,
is
very important. And I
question.
think I really because especially think about my own needs and my own thoughts as well. Thinking about the association between poor sleep,
Mm.
quality and quantity, and the symptoms of anxiety, depression, and psychosis. There's been a journal, it's in the Journal of Affective Disorders, and they talk a lot about the relationships between sleep and postpartum mental health disorders.
Mm.
And it highlights that, there is a correlation between this. Lack of sleep can lead to people, having these mental health disorders. So then it just talks, it kind of like brings into light the importance of having intense support network
Mm.
around you, loved ones, friends, in those important times, 2 weeks to 6 weeks, really having that rigid support system. Write it down, make that plan with your partner, make that plan with your mother-in-law, make that plan with and you would be so surprised how that will help you to have a good start.
Yes.
Having someone to just come around and cook a meal for you, amazing help.
Yeah, thank
Having
you.
someone just take your baby for an hour so you can go and get a sleep for 2 hours, for an hour or two,
Yeah.
amazing help, you know. And so I really like, one of the things that I think is so important is having that support system and putting that around yourself, you know, in the first 2 to 6 weeks. Write it down, plan it with your family. The second time I had a baby, that's exactly what I done.
Yeah.
And thank God I did, because I also want to make it people aware that if you've had a mental health episode with your first baby, you are twice as likely to have it with your second or third or so on. You have a higher likelihood of having that with your babies.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you're putting that support system around yourself. This is what I did with my son. And actually, I had my mother-in-law, I had my mum, I had my grandma, I had my husband. Like, it was literally they're taking over for each other for the
Yeah,
first
fully.
6 weeks and two,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
Yep.
And I had that support continuously, and that really helped me a lot, you know. And again, with my son, I started to get unwell at the very beginning stages because I was in hospital for 3 days and my husband wasn't able to come in because of the COVID period. They had lots
Mm.
of restrictions. So actually, I was getting very sleep deprived and I started to get very unwell. So as soon as I got home, I gave him the baby. I said, take him, take the bottle. I don't care anything. I just jumped in
Yep.
bed. But I knew what I needed.
You have
And
to
it made
do
a
something like that.
huge difference to the way I was able to then carry on, you know, build up my strength. So,
As you were saying about sleep, even if you just go from the scientific explanation of why we sleep, it's
mm,
for the body to recharge, rebuild, repair. If you've just given birth, the most traumatizing thing that can happen to a human body, you know, other than, other horrible, horrible things. But just
mm,
giving birth in itself is such a traumatizing thing for the body. The body's going to have time to recharge and repair. If you're
mm,
not sleeping, your body doesn't get the time to do those things.
oh,
So then, even the chemicals that have changed, the hormones, everything within your brain isn't getting a chance to come back down again
yeah,
because you're not having the period of sleep when your body would be doing all of that work for itself. So
mm,
even if you don't think of it from a mental health perspective, think of it from a biological, scientific one. We know
absolutely.
why we sleep. So a mother not sleeping, how is she going to be 100%? It's not possible. So
Okay.
even at the best of times, you're dealing with a baby that's awake every couple of hours, needing to be
Mm,
every few hours. So even at the best of times, with absolutely balanced mental health, that's still a trauma on the body.
mhm,
For those who then their hormones, I know with me, one little hormonal change, I know it within my body. I can
absolutely.
eat the wrong things. I know it within my body. If our
Absolutely.
bodies are that sensitive to just the things that we put in it, imagine when something, a whole human, has come out of it. So if we just
Yeah,
put it from that basic common sense perspective,
yeah,
sleep is needed, and not just for the mother, the father's going to need it too, because he'll be sleep deprived
mm,
and still probably expected to go back to work in 2 weeks. It's
absolutely.
a lot of transition when
Mm,
a child comes in, whether it's the first or the 10th.
mhm,
I
mhm,
agree with you fully how important sleep is. As we've said,
mm,
too much could mean that you're falling into a depressive state.
mm,
Your body needs it. Allow your body what it needs, because then later on down the line, you'll be able to be everything your baby needs. But
exactly.
don't try and do it all on your own, even if the
Mm,
decision to have the child was one you made by yourself. If you have
mm,
anyone around you that's willing to support, please, please take it,
mm,
because you'll realize that having that pride of, no, I'm going to do this by myself,
mm,
is just a detriment to both you and your child.
absolutely. Absolutely. You're so right, Maya. Yeah. Really brilliant. Yeah.
I've, as I've said, I've learnt this through my own experience. Having my
Mm,
daughters, I'd made the choice to be a single mother, knew that that was going to happen within months of me
mm,
getting pregnant. So when it came
mm,
down to having them, I was very, very controlling. Like mine, mine, mine,
mm.
mine, mine. Because as
Yeah.
far as I was concerned, I made the decision. Therefore, everyone's going to
Mm,
expect me to do this
yeah.
independently. So
Yeah.
now I'm going to just have that attitude already in my mind of, they're my baby,
Yeah.
my choice. I've got this. God,
Mm,
what? It was
mm.
them.
Yeah.
I've never done that.
Two babies. Woo!
Now, as I said,
Amazing.
my son, it felt very, very boring when it was just one.
Mm,
But having
mm,
the break of my daughter's going over to my parents for a couple of weeks after I just had my son allowed me to have sleep when I needed it, to put my house
mm,
together, to be able to set up a routine of what it would look like
mm.
when the girls rejoined us, because at that point they were 3, 4 years old. So there's
Oh,
them in nursery, this newborn. It was transitions all over the place. But just
yeah.
like you, I knew better for myself after the first. These are the things I'm going to have to implement. So therefore, I
Mm,
was able to breastfeed my son for
mm,
13 months because I'd had
mm,
place to be able to have that time, that rest, that,
mm,
you know, calmer transition into
mm,
now being a mother of three. So it
mm,
is so
mm,
important for you to have plans, to have
mm,
schedules, to have organization. And within
mm,
that, your support system have massive, massive, not
mm.
small, massive roles until you've got into a space where you can reduce that.
Absolutely. And I think it's okay to ask for help and we should not be afraid. We need
So,
to understand that that is a natural part of human. Even animals do it. We enrote our siblings, they say it takes a village, isn't it, to raise a child,
yeah,
and it's for a reason.
you
Because it
need
really
the whole village. You need the chief,
does.
you need the cook, you need the teacher,
Yeah.
you need the babysitters, you need those that are just
Mhm.
going to, as you said, allow you to go and have a nap. That's
That's
it.
just so
Sometimes it could be
important.
small, or sometimes it could be so big. I need you to
Yeah.
take me and the baby here. I need you to just take the baby.
Right.
I need
Right.
someone to take me to a spa. I need,
Yeah.
you're allowed to do that because not only are you furthering society by having more kids,
Mm-hmm.
this is a lifelong responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Life changes and they become adults, etc., etc. I'm telling you, from a person
Mm-hmm.
with adult children, continues for life.
Yeah.
Just what they
Mhm.
need changes.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
please, mothers, take care of yourselves.
Yeah.
You don't realize how important you are. You don't
Mm-hmm.
realize how necessary you are. However, we need you in your best states to do
Mm-hmm.
this beautiful yet demanding job. So
Mm-hmm.
get all the support, all the help you can from wherever you can, and never feel any way about asking for it because it is
Mm-hmm.
something you definitely require. It's not something that you're just not capable of being a mother on your own. You shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be anyway. No one should be on their own
Yeah.
raising kids, I don't think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Takes that village and it's back to out the back. For
I'm
sure.
grateful for my village. I know my children would not be who they are if I didn't have
Absolutely.
the support systems around me.
Yeah.
My children have been
Mm,
raised by more than just me. They've been
absolutely.
raised by everybody I trust, everybody I love,
Mm,
everybody they trust.
yeah.
So I'm
That's
grateful
lovely.
for the village. They're still mine. They're still my baby.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know it all. And
Yeah.
there are people around me, like my parents, my grandparents, my aunties, who've
Yeah.
done this before
Yeah.
and who can give me tools that they have used. They may
Mm-hmm.
not work for me. Every
Mm-hmm.
parenting journey is different.
Mm-hmm.
They are there to be able to support. And as we've said, we can't explain or express how important support is
Yeah.
when becoming or just being a mother throughout the whole time. The journey is
Mm-hmm.
a very long and arduous one. It's definitely worth it, but you need support. So if you can get
Mm-hmm.
it, please, wherever within your community, there are groups.
Yeah.
So get
Absolutely.
support wherever you
Absolutely.
can.
Yeah. Completely.
Yes. So I've got a few more questions because I could talk to you on this subject forever and ever
We do.
about. But one of the first things I'll go to of
Mm.
the last few questions is what are some small but effective self-care strategies for mum?
Okay. Um, I would say when it comes to self-care, like I said, make a routine. Your babies are very good at having their little routine. They
They
wake up
like
at
a
a certain time.
routine.
They like their breastfeed at a certain time. They like their bottle feed at a certain time. So have a routine. Have a
Mm,
routine with your baby. And then when you develop a good routine with your baby, then you can input some time for yourself.
yeah, I
That's
agree.
very important. Whether it be having a bath with salts and relaxing for a little bit, whether it
Yeah,
be going out for a walk and leaving that baby with someone. Plan yourself so that you actually are able to look at the time that you have. If you write it down, you'll be able to see, actually, I have an hour here in the day where he sleeps or she sleeps for an hour. I'm going to go and have a bath during that time and ask my husband or my friend or my sister to watch that baby in that time. Intentionally make time for yourself. That is what I would say is very important for mums. When we don't do that, that's when things build up. We have no outlets. You need to have an outlet. You need to have a space where you can intentionally make time for you, make time for self-care activities. Find a time where you are able to fit that into your baby's routine. So that right now, your baby is going to take priority over you. So find time in your day to fit that in. That's a very important one. Again, we were saying about giving time as well, for you to implement things like, self-care. You like to get your nails done and you like to get your hair done. Why are you stopping doing that? Why stop? Why stop? Continue those things. Those are so important, for our well-being. If that's what you've used as a coping mechanism that whole time, you've used that, you've been doing that during pregnancy and beyond. Keep doing that. Keep looking after yourself. Don't let that slip, because as soon as you let that slip, again, we're going to fall into that low place. Yeah. So, try to maintain some of the rituals that you've done before, because that will then help you to maintain a balance. It's very difficult sometimes when you have that baby and that baby's taking up all your time and you now need to adopt that new role. But yeah, try to implement, your routine alongside your babies. Now your baby's here. Co-occupation is a huge one as well, we talk about. And so in OOT, that's the model that we usually use when you think about motherhood, because with mums, you're doing everything with your baby, and co-occupation is basically interactive and responsive. Yeah, so you're sharing physically, emotionally, intentionally an occupation with another person. So everything like breastfeeding, that is a co-occupation.
Yeah.
Laying on the floor with your baby and playing with them, looking at them, smiling with them, that's a co-occupation. Baby massage, co-occupation. So I always encourage that mums do that. So I think that's very important. Spend some time to do that with your baby. That helps with the bonding. That helps with, you also developing a sense of self-worth, self-esteem, because your baby will respond to you. And those cues are so important as well for developing that connection.
Yeah.
Even looking at your baby, you're able to develop that connection with them. So, maybe thinking more about things that you can be doing with your baby. The baby massage is very, very important, very nice. Breastfeeding is a big one, but also bottle feeding as well. And I think being aware of what works for you as well. So if you are struggling, like for example, my daughter, she had tongue tie. That wasn't recognized at hospital at that moment when I took her. It wasn't recognized until she was 2.5 months by an occupational therapist, after me having months and months of support breastfeeding. So if you have any kind of concerns that feeding's going, they're struggling with feeding, that it's not right, go to your GP, speak with them about that difficulty that you're having, and maybe even query tongue tie, because that's a very common thing, but a lot of people don't know about it. And so that lack of awareness means that babies are at risk as well. As well as parents' mental health is at risk, because if you're struggling with feeding, you're going to be struggling with everything.
Are there any resources or tools you recommend for maternal mental health support?
So of course, you can find me at www.babymuma.co.uk. Come onto my webpage. I have a very supportive space on there. You can be in touch with me via email. And then, any problems or any difficulties you have, we can talk through, we can make a plan around that, and think about how to move forward. I have a blog also, which is very supportive, talk about issues within motherhood, things that affect us day to day as mothers. So that's also a nice supportive space for you. And also, I have my TikTok as well on there as well, linked in there. And hopefully we'll be able to have more regular, lives where we can actually, have a community of mums coming together, supporting each other. That's very, very important. That community, it's so beneficial. Being able to talk to someone else and experiencing the same thing, that's invaluable. So that's the space that I really want to create. So hopefully through TikTok, I'll be able to do that more often. But also another thing I want to say is the importance of culturally sensitive therapy. And what do I mean by that? Is therapy that is going to be respectful of religion, cultural difference, and being aware of that. And why do I think that's important? Because I'm going to give an example of myself, actually, because I think that's the best thing to do sometimes for people to understand, is that when I actually was struggling with my mental health after I had my son, and I went back to work, actually, wasn't even, see, it just shows how big that spectrum is. I went back to work when he was 14 months. So that's, shows that it doesn't matter whenever you're struggling with mental health, reach out. I reached out to IAPS. I thought, okay, great, I'm going to do a self-referral. And I had a lovely psychotherapist named Tom. He was absolutely lovely. And I really enjoyed meeting with him. At the same time, I found it very difficult because some of the issues I was experiencing in real life, some
Yeah.
of the things that I've been through, I didn't feel like I could really relate to him at all.
Right.
He wasn't from my background. He didn't understand what racism, well, actually, he understands racism, but actually to have the lived experience of racism means a lot. And
Yeah.
so I also felt that I wasn't able to speak about that as well because I felt like, oh, it's a bit of a taboo subject to talk about with somebody that's not from your community. And I think we all feel that way sometimes. It's not anything that's, out of the ordinary. So, I think that's one thing that I will definitely provide in my service, in my practice. I do provide that culturally sensitive therapy because I think that's very important.
It is.
Being able to relate to somebody else, being able to understand the experiences that Black women go through. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience, negative maternal outcomes.
Mhm.
That says a lot. There is a lot that Black women go through during that period. It's not just the having the baby; they have to navigate lots of things, systemic issues. Racism within medical care. These are important things to be discussed, and these things can also contribute to someone having a negative mental health condition or problems. Because that's something that they've navigated all throughout their life, and now at this moment they're still having to navigate it when they're very vulnerable,
Yeah.
less likely to be able to manage it. So these are things that is the reason why I think we have to provide that culturally sensitive therapy, and that's very important to have somebody that's from your community speaking about these things openly. And that's a space that I most definitely have to create for Black and brown women. So that is my personal, support. I would say another group as well to explore is the motherhood group. And they are, campaigning as well for better outcomes, equitable care, and support for also Black and brown mums too.
Have
So,
mm, their Black maternal mental health week in September, is it?
yeah, yes, yeah.
Uh,
So,
so
so
they're doing some
wonderful work, like amazing. And so check them out as well. You can find them at motherhood group.org. Go, look through, see the kind of work they're doing. They also provide support as well. Um, and then you've got also an app which I thought was brilliant as well, which is 5x More app. Again, created to kind of bridge that gap for Black and brown people, and so that is those are the two that are focused more on Black and brown people. We've also got things like birthrights as well.org. Birthrights, again, they also talk about the inequities in care between, um, you know, uh, black and white, the differences, you know, that are present. And I guess they want to bridge that gap too. So these are the organizations that you can actually go on, read more about perinatal mental health, learn more about it. And then also another one is Panda UK. They actually have a helpline, a national helpline, and I will put all that those links there for you as well. The sad
Great.
The sad thing is that because this is a very new and developing area, there is not enough. So when you think about support places to go for support, we're really lacking in that. And there's so many international helplines, but then why should it be USA based? That's different demographic completely. So the needs are different for that people there. So you know, there is definitely a need for more services, more support. But again, you can always go to your GP. Always go to your GP to be signposted to local support in your community, perinatal mental health support. That's always a possibility.
Well, I'm glad you started up your practice, because now there will be more in that space, and they will be cared for by such a wonderful, loving woman. And I'm grateful for
Thank
in
you.
my life, my whole life, literally. I'm not a little bit, so in your whole life. But yes, going to close now, which I'm sad about because I've really thoroughly done. But I'd just like quickly, any key summaries, or just, you know, to put a lovely bow on this conversation, what would everybody?
Okay, I would say stay strong. Understand that this is a temporary state. That's the most important thing I want women to understand, because when you're in it, you feel that this is going to go on forever and it's never going to end. Your baby will get older. Things will change. Their needs will change. They'll become more independent. They will be sitting and not caring about you at one point. And you'll be like, oh, I miss when they did. You know, remember, this is a temporary state. Yeah. So during this time, get as much help as possible. It's okay to reach out to family, to friends, anyone willing to come in and be next to your side. Take it. Take it. If they have to sleep over, take it. Make sure you're looking after yourself. Okay. It's all about finding your feet, you know, getting to know each other, because remember, the baby has his own ways and also you have your ways. So getting to know each other, and that's very, very important at the first couple of months, you know, but it will pass. This will pass, you know, but you need the support. Get the support. Fine. Seek advice from your GP should you have any concerns around yours and your baby's health. Like I said, about things like breastfeeding, you are struggling with that and you're thinking something's not right, go and get help. It's okay to say, I'm not sure about something, because you're learning. This is a learning process for you. It doesn't matter if it's your first baby or your second or third. Every baby is different. So it's always going to be a learning process. Yeah, that's really important to understand as well. There's no such thing as a silly question. You're not wasting professionals' time at any time, because that's what they're there for. They're there to listen. They're there to support you, to equip you with better ways of coping and managing. And that's exactly what I do. If you came to me, I would be listening. I'd be thinking about ways that you need to maybe adapt things in your life, maybe ways that you want to adapt things. It's all about you, and it's a person-centered approach. So you're not wasting anyone's time. Reach out, get the help you need. You're not alone. Remember to reach out at every opportunity. And breastfeeding support is a big one. You know, people think that breastfeeding just comes naturally. Just put them to the breast and they and that is just that's not the reality at all. You have to learn how to hold your baby. You have to learn how to get the breast in the right place and get the baby suckling in the right way, especially if they have things like tongue tie. Very difficult. And so get support. Go to those breastfeeding support sessions if you're struggling. It's okay. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing to be ashamed of. You should, you know, you're taking that step to be a better mum by doing that. So go for it. Go for it. Go to those mum and baby groups as well. Go to those mum and baby groups. Do not isolate yourself. Be part of a community. That helps. being able to talk to others about your challenges, because you know what, the same challenges that you're having, other mums are having it too.
Very true. I
Yeah.
agree. I have lots of conversations with my friends who, luckily, we all have children around the same age now. At each stage of life, we sit, we talk, we go through it together because, as you said, each child is different. But to have other people that you can sit and say, wow, this is difficult, or wow, this is different to what I expected.
Yeah.
Back to, yeah, I know, me too. It kind of lifts this feeling of it, the problem is me. Often
Right.
you have a community of people saying, you're not alone, sis. It's
Exactly.
easy. It makes it's because our bodies are made to do it, doesn't mean that it comes as naturally as we think. As we know, each woman is different. So each baby will be different. Each situation will be different.
Mhm.
You've gone through in your life changes um what that situation may look like, what becoming a
Mm.
like based on having a traumatic childhood, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
All of that mixed up. So never compare yourself, that's a huge one, to anybody else's journey.
Absolutely.
However, there are other people out there that at the very least can empathize with what
Mm.
you're going through and support you by saying, sis, I got your back. Because I
Mhm.
know what that feels like.
Right.
Certain things my friends have been through, I haven't been through as a mother, and
Right.
vice versa. But as long as we can sit down together and go, this is not easy, this is difficult, it
Mhm.
helps to just be honest with yourself
Yeah.
because we're not trying to pretend that everything is great. You're doing so well because that's what you think people are expecting, is when it will all creep up on you and that overwhelming feeling will take over.
Yeah.
Every single mother goes through a moment of,
Yeah. You will
it's
do it.
it's not just one moment, it's probably daily, it might be
Yeah.
week, period of parenthood you're going through. But there's
Mm.
so many different stages of parenthood. There's so many different ways in which to parent. We get information thrown at us all day long about gentle
Mm.
parenting this and you know doing this with our kids and healthy eating
Mm.
this. It can be overwhelming because you
Mm.
want the best by your children.
Of
You want to
course.
make sure they live a healthy life emotionally, physically, mentally. However, you are still learning your life at the same time. So give yourself some grace. Realize it's not an easy job. It's a very important one, so therefore it's going to automatically be difficult.
Mm.
And you're doing great.
Yeah.
I feel that most mothers are doing amazing. They will never see it and believe it to the extent that you would from outside the box.
Mm.
But that is also a sign that you're doing just fine.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. That's beautiful.
I
Mm.
thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with
Me
you.
too.
We are able to help people. There's a lot of information that they can receive from this.
Yeah.
I don't really want to let you go, but I need to. Wonderfully informative conversation. And
Mm.
really, with regards to all of the places we've discussed, the
Yeah.
things that you signposted to, the support places, all of that is available. You can either DM us and we'll send you over everything you need. And there will be some of the links in below the video. So please comment, please share, please let us know what you think. And if you have any questions or if you'd like us to do another episode on maternal mental health, please get in contact. Comment, share, like, love. Thank you again, Rachel.
Oh, thank you so much, Mai. Thank you. You've been wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the space as well.
Thank you for being in this space because we need to be able to speak to people that have the life lived experience as well as the professional side of things who can help everybody through because our well-being is extremely important in all walks of life. So thank you again and
Thank
take care.
you.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Take care.